to your favourite teacher. Today we're looking at Checking Out Me History from the Power and Conflict cluster. Checking Out Me History draws on Agard's experience to make us look at the way history is taught and how we conceive our identity as we learn about cultural traditions and their narratives. Agard had to follow a history curriculum biased towards white people, especially British whites, so that he learned about mythical nursery rhyme characters instead of living black people from the past. He challenges this view of history and cites some major black figures to balance the bias and create a basis for his own identity. One of the ways in which Agard challenges Western culture and Western history is the structure of the poem itself. Written in irregular rhyme with short, mixed enjambment in verses, this creates the tone of a man who is speaking out and is angry and frustrated. There are portions of the poem in italics, and they have a very blunt rhythm which contrasts the rest of the poem, where Agard uses a simple rhyme scheme and a regular line length. The overall effect is that these two different types of stanzas seem to clash with one another in rhythm and in message. The clash between these two types of stanzas is therefore used by Agard to signal the way he is trying to disrupt the regular telling of history, the same way that his italics disrupt the fairly common standard rhythm of the other stanzas. Overall then, Agard's language in the poem is meant to challenge what he was taught growing up, and challenge Western culture in general. By opening with the colloquial language using the Creole dialect and repeating the phrases "dem tell me," Agard establishes a very clear and aggressive voice in the poem. The poem's speaker is meant to represent the Creole tradition of Agard's past by using this dialect. Furthermore, the repetition of the pronoun dem creates an aggressive tone for his speaker, as it implies a separation between the speaker and the others, as they must be different to the speaker himself. Furthermore, the imperative verb tell emphasises this antagonism between the speaker and the Western culture, as it implies that they command him to learn a particular thing. As the poem moves into its stanzas of regular length and simplistic rhyme, Agard's speaker seems to be imitating a nursery rhyme kind of rhythm. The idea of Agard using a nursery rhyme rhythm is also emphasised by the references he makes to Dick Whittington and "the dish ran away with the spoon." This nursery rhyme rhythm implies the way that Agard's speaker is treated like a child by Western culture, an idea which shows the conflict between the two cultures. This simplistic nursery rhyme quality also helps to make the italicised portions stand out, emphasising those stanzas in which Agard retells his own culture's history through figures like Toussaint Louverture and Nanny de Maroon and Mary Seacole, black figures of serious historical significance that aren't taught in British education. Thus, the juxtaposition of these two rhythms helps to emphasise the divide between the two cultures and the conflict between them which Agard's poem is trying to bring out. In this conflict, Agard's speaker tries to emphasise the positive qualities of those black figures in order to glorify them. Each figure is referred to with natural imagery, Toussaint being a thorn, Nanny de Maroon being a firewoman and a hopeful stream, and Mary Seacole also being a healing star and a yellow sunrise. This positive natural imagery helps to bring honour to these figures and implies to readers the way in which these black figures are worthy of praise, just like the natural beauties which they are compared to. By the end of the poem, the speaker returns to the repetition of "dem tell me," which begins in the first stanza. This time, though, the speaker alters this repetition in the final line, where Agard writes, "But now I checkin out me own history, I carving out me identity." By use of the word "but" here emphasises the change that is occurring, and that now Agard's speaker and the black history which he represents will become more important. He uses the word carving, which is very significant as it implies two different things. Firstly, carving could imply a rather violent action being undertaken by Agard's speaker. The violent connotation helps to emphasise the conflict between Agard's speaker and the Western culture, which is central to the poem. However, Carving might also imply that the speaker is creating their identity in an artistic manner, similar to the work of a sculptor. The connotations of artistry evoked changed the actions of the speaker from one of violence and aggression to one of beauty and craftsmanship. Overall, then, Agard is not writing this poem as a complete act of hateful rebellion, but rather one that attempts to create a new, beautiful history and identity for his own culture. I'm Miss Meeks, and we've been studying power and conflict poetry.